Hi, in this video we're going to talk about Linux paths. When do we use paths? Almost all the time. Whenever you need to point to any particular directory or file, you need to tell the operating system how to get there, and that's where the path comes in. This is an example of a directory tree, which is hierarchical in nature. So at the topmost level, you know that you have the root directory. Underneath that, you have a whole bunch of different system directories, one of which is home directory. And in the home directory, you will have most of the user accounts. So as an example, I'm saying user 1, user 2. And then each user will have their own directories and subdirectories and files. So that's what constitutes the hierarchical nature or the tree-like nature of Linux file system. So in order to point to any particular directory or file, in other words, in order to indicate a path, there's a couple of things you need to understand. One, that anytime you want to talk about the current directory, it's represented by a dot. In other words, if you're here in directory A, then directory A is represented by a dot. The parent directory, which means what is the directory above this? So above directory A is user 1. So user 1 becomes the parent directory for directory A. And that's represented by 2 dots. So parent directory, 2 dots, current directory, 1 dot. So let's take a look at what the different types of paths are. The first one is absolute path that we're going to talk about. There are 3 different paths. So the first is absolute path, which means from the top, how do you point to the directory you want to go to? The second one we'll talk about is a relative path, which is based on where you are. So if you're located in a certain directory, you want to point to something else, then that path will be built or indicated based on your location. And that's why it's called relative. It's relative to your location. And when I give examples, it'll become clear. And the third one we're going to talk about is relative to home. And once you understand the absolute path, you'll understand relative to home as well. So let me explain how the absolute path works. So let's say I'm user 1 and I'm currently sitting inside or logged inside directory A. If I want to point to a file inside directory B with an absolute path, what that means is I'm defining my path all the way from the top. So I'm going to say /home /user1 /directory B. / is used at the root and then also used to separate each of these directories in the path. That's how you would define an absolute path. Let's say I was sitting or logged in directory A and I'm pointing to directory B. In absolute path, it will never change. So it'll be /home /user1 /directory B. If I was here, if I was user 2 and I was sitting inside directory C, and let's say I have the permission to point to this directory from the other user. In absolute path, I would still define it exactly the same way. So although I'm user 2, although I'm sitting in directory C, that does not matter when you're talking about absolute path. The absolute path to point to directory B here would still be /home /user1 /directory B. So the important thing to remember about absolute path is, number 1, it always begins with a / because it always begins from the root. And the second thing is, when you're using an absolute path to point to a particular directory or file, that never changes regardless of where you are logged in, because that path remains the same. Let me show you an example. So I'm currently in Matrix Linux server in my account. PWD will show you that I'm sitting inside PMDIR. So let me just do CD. Now I'm sitting in my home directory. So my home directory is /home /praveen.mitera. So that's slash home, and then instead of user1, my ID is praveen.matera. So that's what you're seeing there. So this is, I'm sitting in my home directory. Now, inside my home directory, I have another directory called pmdir. In other words, if this is praveen.matera, I have another directory here called pmdir. All right? So if I'm referring to pmdir, let's look at what I have in there. Whoops. Let me go into pmdir and let me do a tree command because that shows me what's inside pmdir. So I have some files, I have some directories, and in this case I have under pmdir, I have a directory called D100, which has two subdirectories, D1 and D2. And inside D1, I have a file called names. So let's say that I wanted to, let me go to my home directory. So cd, I'm now above pmdir, I'm in my home directory. So if I wanted to, let's say, do an ls command pointing to this file, names, how am I going to do that? So I do an ls command, and I'm going to need to create the path. I can't just say names because names is not immediately in the directory that I'm in. It's inside this directory, pmdir, then inside D100, then inside D1, and then it's the file exists. So how do I build that absolute path? So the first thing we said was it always begins with a /. So there we go. Then you keep going down. I'm going from my home directory to my directory to pmdir, and then from pmdir I go into D100, so /D100, and then from that I need to go into D1, so /D1, and then I will see the file called names, so / names. So what you're seeing here is the absolute path pointing to the names file, pointing to this file. All right. So if I've typed it correctly, when I hit enter, it will show the presence of that file. I can change my ls command to ls-l. So let me bring up that command. But instead of just ls, I'm going to do ls-l. And again, it shows me that I have this file which is existing in home, praveen.matera, pmdir, D100, D1, and names. I can look at any, let's say I wanted to point to file 1, right? So this is not inside any directory, it's just inside pmdir. So let's go back up here a little bit. So inside the pmdir, I have a file called file1. So let's point to that. So where am I? I'm in my home directory. So /home. So let's do ls-l. And I'm going to build my path again. So home, praveen.matera. And then from there I need to go into pmdir, which was above here, and then file 1. So pmdir and then file 1. And it shows you that, yep, there is a file by that name. So in this case, I was in my home directory. Here, I was sitting in a different directory, so it doesn't matter where I am. I can still point to it exactly in the same way. For example, let's say I'm logged into D3 directory. All right, so where is the D3 directory? Let me show you the tree command again for pmdir. So in my home directory, /home/praveen.matera, I have pmdir right under it. And pmdir contains all of these directories and files. So let's say I'm sitting inside D4. How do I get there? I can cd and come here by defining the path. So I can go cd, and I'm currently in my home directory, so I can say pmdir. After pmdir, I'm going to go into D4. So I'm now, if you do pwd, I'm now sitting in /home/praveen.matera, /pmdir/d4. So I'm sitting right here. That's where I'm logged in at this moment. So now if I want to, let's say, cat the content of this file, I cannot just say cat names because names does not exist in this directory, right? So in order to point to this file, what must I do? I must say the command cat, but now I need to build the path, point to this. The only way we know how to point is using an absolute path. So let's do an absolute path now. So the cat command, instead of ls, I'm using cat because I want not just to see that it's there, but to actually see the content of that file. So to point to this, I must start from the top in an absolute path. So I must go /home praveen.mitera, and then I'm in pmdir. Inside pmdir, I must go into D100. Oops. D100. And then from here, I must go into D1. And then I reach the file called names. And because I have a cat command here, it should show me the contents of this file. And it does. I have a bunch of names there. So what have we done here? We have still used an absolute path. Now a relative path is very different. Relative path is relative to your location. It changes with your location. So right now I'm in my home directory. If I was located inside D100 and I wanted to access names file, that's going to be very different compared to if I was located in here and I wanted to access the names file with the relative path. So let's see how. First, I'm going to locate myself in D100. I'm currently in home praveen.mitera, so I need to go into pmdir and then into D100. So with the cd command, I'm going to say, first let me see where I am. I'm in my home directory. I'm going to cd into pmdir and inside pmdir into D100. So now I'm in D100. I'm here. So how do I access the names file? I can simply say from the current directory, go into D1 and then into names. So I can either ls-l and I can say from the current directory, so dot, go into D1 and then into names. So current directory, then D1, then names. I'm making a relative path here because it's not beginning with the /. It's not beginning all the way at the top with the root. It's starting from where I am. I'm located here. That's what the dot is representing. So I can see that it accesses it. If I change this into a cat, then instead of listing it, it's going to show me the content of that file. So we've just used a relative path here. Let's look at another relative path. Now, I still want to access this file, but now let's say I'm located in D3. Then how I point to names is going to be different. From here, I'm saying from current go to D1, D1 go to names. But when I'm here, I can't just say from D1 go to names. I have to first go up a level to the parent, then go into D100, then go into D1, and then into names, right? So the path will have to go something like this. It's going to change. Whereas previously my path was this, D100 to D1 to names. Now my path is D3, up a level, D100, D1, and then names. So let's do this tree. Where am I? PWD. I'm inside D100. Let me do a tree command for pmdir. So I want to be located inside, let's say inside D3. So from my current location of cd, so I'm currently located in my home directory, pwd. I'm in my home directory. So from there I need to get into pmdir and then into D3. So CD, go into PMDIR, and then go into D3. So now I'm located in D3. I'm located here, right? So now in order to point to names, I must go up a level. So here, I'm still going to use the cat command, but I'm saying go up a level. So from D3, up a level is here into PMDIR, and then I must go to D100. So D100, and then from here I need to go into D1, and now I can access names. And I get that. So this is different from what is the cat command we had to use before. Let's get to that in a moment. There we go. So previously we had to say cat from the current go to D1 and then names. And now we had to use a different path. Why did we have to choose a different path? Because we are located in a different directory. Here I was located just above D1 in D100. So we had to say go down into D1 and then into names. But now we're located in D3. So we had to say go up a level, then go into D100, then D1, then names. So you see how, because our location is different here and here, the path, the relative path, is going to be different, even though we're pointing to the same file. That's the challenge with relative path. Your location changes, the relative path changes. So the last type of path is the relative to home. Now, relative to home is, think of it as a variation on the absolute path. So this will also never change, but it's like a shorthand of the absolute path. It starts with the tilde sign, this little squiggly sign from your keyboard. And let me give you an example. So we all understand now that if I was user 1 in this example, if I'm user 1, then my home directory will be /home/user1, right? Okay, so /home/user1. If I wanted to refer to directory B using an absolute path, I would say /home/user1/directory B, right? From the same diagram. /home/user1/directory B. That's how I'm going to point using an absolute path. Now, if I was to use a relative to home path and want to point to directory B, then the easiest way to understand that is to say that the home directory, which is /home/user1, this home directory of the person that's logged in, gets replaced with the tilde sign. So /home/user1/directory B becomes tilde/directory B. That's the easiest way to understand relative to home. Your home directory gets replaced with the tilde sign. So let's do an example here. So we had used an absolute path to point to the names file. So I'm just going to bring up that particular command where I'd used the absolute path. There we go. So from the root to home to Praveen.Matera to PMDIR to D100, then D1, and finally names. That's the way we use absolute path, right? If I was to do the same command, but now I want to use relative to home, I have to go back in here and replace my home directory with a tilde sign. There we go. Home directory with a tilde sign. And we get the same result. So hopefully you can see here that with the tilde, all you're doing is replacing the home directory with this tilde, tilde sign. Everything else stays the same. So this is a relative to home path. This is an absolute path. One thing you have to understand here is that the tilde represents the home directory of whoever is logged in. So if I'm user 1, this is my home directory. Tilde will represent my home directory. Sometimes, however, you may want to point to another user's home directory, another user's. In that case, there's a slight difference here. So here you're going to say tilde, but you have to indicate the user ID of that other person. Tilde followed by user 2 means please expand this into the home directory of user 2. All right, so that's important. Here we did not put my username because it replaces this entire piece, my home directory of the user 1 that's logged in. But if I'm pointing to a different user, then tilde followed by that user's ID is what you need to point. I'm going to give you an example of this by using the example of a user that's set up, which is ULI 101 on Matrix. So if I do an ls command, and if I'm going to point to ULI 101, just like Praveen.Mitera is a username, this course, ULI 101, is set up as a user so that we can put all kinds of files for that course in that directory. So I'm pointing to the ULI 101, where ULI 101 is a user that's set up on Matrix, all right? And there is a file called assign1. So when I do an ls command, or even ls-l probably, just to make it more clear, it's going to show me that, yep, I have ULI 101 as an assign1. They also have A1 there, so that exists as well. So don't worry about what the pointer kind of thing means here. We'll learn about that later on. But basically all it's saying is that I'm pointing to assign1 and I'm able to find it. Now, if I was to replace this with relative to home, then I cannot just say ls-l and just use a tilde sign and continue to say, assign1. That's not going to work. Why? Because this will assume that the tilde has to expand to my home directory, which is not this. My home directory is home/Praveen.Mitera, right? So this will be wrong, and it's going to give me an error message. There is no such file or directory. So how can I change this so that I'm pointing to another user, that other user being ULI 101? So the important thing to remember there is I have to take this away and actually put the name of that user. So ULI 101. Now I'm saying open up the tilde and replace it with /home/ and then this ID. So it's important not to put a slash here. Here, when I did this one, I actually replaced just my home directory with this and then had a slash. But when I'm pointing to a different user, I do not put the slash. I say tilde sign instead of just the tilde sign. I'm going to say it's tilde and then the other user's name and then the file I'm pointing to. Okay, that's the only difference. And that's really the third type, or the relative to home. So hopefully you have a good idea now of how to point to a directory or a file in 3 different ways: an absolute path, a relative path, or a relative to home. Thank you.